Lisa Fega, welcome. What is Hot 97 and why would it broadcast a song that is so offensive to millions of people, the Tsunami song?
Yeah, Hot 97 is a radio station in New York City. It is the #1 urban station in the market, well, and that's the #1 market in the country. So it is the #1 hip-hop station. Why would they broadcast that song is a good question. It is very offensive, but what they're doing is they're trying to kind of play to the shock jock kind of genre. But the problem with that is that it's a station that targets what we call the 12+ demographic, kids.
Of what race?
Well, you know, all kids like hip hop, but for the most part, they target the Latino and Black audience.
Do you have any figures on how much radio is being listened to by adolescents today, say starting at the age of what, 12, 14?
Right. Well, I can tell you that in the African American segment, the teenagers listen to more radio and watch more TV than any segment of our population. What
is it about hip hop of this genre that we're talking about that is attractive to urban stations? Is it what is an urban station as distinct to other stations?
Well, let's talk about that, because technically Hot 97 isn't really an urban station. It's not formatted that way. It's actually called rhythmic urban, which means it's a top 40, and a lot of times it has to do with advertising, so that they can attract advertisers that would both give dollars to, say, Black consumers or listeners, and then they can attract and say they're a top 40 kind of sorta, and they can attract dollars that would be mainstream.
How offensive is the explicit language that we're talking about on this program?
Very explicit. It doesn't stop at just the Tsunami parody song. I mean, I got involved with Hot 97 right at that moment, being involved with a coalition in New York City, a bunch of very multiracial people. We're talking white, Black, Jewish, Muslim, Filipino. People got together because they were sick and tired of being sick and tired of the station. This is not the first complaint about Hot 97 and some of the racism that they're promoting. So this group of individuals got together, they protested, they told them that they were upset, and then what happened is they decided, Hot 97 apologized, they fired their, the people, the little people. The song played for 4 days straight. So management approved the song. It's not something that DJs have the power to just put on because they thought it was funny.
So you fault the performing artist less than you fault the broadcasting entity?
Yes, but the performing artists in this scenario aren't artists at all. They were actually the people who produced the show. It was a producer who now actually works in one of the largest Asian markets in the country, in the Bay Area. He got rehired, but at a Clear Channel station, I might add. And yes, I fought the broadcaster. And what happened when they apologized and they decided they were going to give $1 million to the Tsunami Fund, they also linked a very violent and explicit contest that they hold called Smackfest.
What is that?
Smackfest is usually young women, maybe between the ages of 18 and 22, usually of color, and what they do is they smack each other until one's injured, which means one's bleeding or a lip blows up, swells up, and then they win $500. And this contest is broadcast live on the air, the radio, and on the web.
Do the hip-hop lyrics that are in question here, do they consistently put down women? Are they misogynistic? Are they anti-woman? Is it reflected in the language that is used?
Yes, it's very adult-themed entertainment that is happening right now on radio, and it's not about the artist making the music. It's really about why the broadcaster chooses to air this type.
How are women characterized in the lyrics?
It's usually what I call, some of it's violent sex. There's some lyrics that talk about tearing down vagina walls. There's a top 10 song now that's called Wait Till You See My Trick. It rhymes with that word. And this is very sexually explicit. And the problem here is that it's illegal to broadcast sexually explicit content between the hours of 6 a.m. 10 p.m. And this law is supposed to be enforced by the FCC to protect children. And here you have stations that directly target children. They're not Howard Stern targeting adult males. They are stations that know that their audience is young. young people. So one minute they're giving away B2K tickets, a very young R&B group, and then the next minute they're talking about very adult-themed things about sexual, oral sex, and other types of topics to shock their audience and think that that'll gain listeners.
Who are the offenders? Who are the artists who engage in hip-hop that is misogynistic and sexually explicit?
Well, it's not really about the artists. The artists have a lot of different songs on their albums, but the ones that the broadcasters choose to play happen to be the most adult-themed entertainment. If you want to talk about an artist like a 50 Cent who's very popular, he has other songs on his album that would be more appropriate for the age group. And if you wanted to put more adult-themed entertainment on the radio, then you put it on after 10 o'clock.
What would you say about the extent to which women are really abusively described in these lyrics? Is it extreme?
It is extreme. It is extreme. I mean, we talk about, see, what radio will try to talk about is they have radio edits. But kids are so much smarter these days. They have the internet. There's so much, many more ways to get music than just to listen to the radio and watch TV. You can download it off the internet. They can go buy the CD. There's no law against kids buying CDs with, parental explicit lyrics. Nobody gets stopped for that. It's not like going to the movies and having to be 17. So these lyrics do give very adult type of theme, but I have to say, well, maybe the record companies are also, pushing and supporting this type of music. But we also need to understand there is a wide variety of hip hop, and it's not all that way.
Is the language readily understood?
No, because I'm sure I could tell you a couple words right now, and you would not know what they were, but they were the top three most played song in the United States, and MTV had them on their show, and it's a song called Get Low, and the lyric is skeet, skeet, skeet.
Does the fact that it's almost in code give it a special allure to younger people who like to use words that are different from adults?
Well, probably, but I mean, it's more like slang, and some of this comes straight from porn. So if you know about that, you know what it is. So yeah, I'm sure kids think it's fun and cool to be, speaking in code, but a lot of adults understand what they're saying too.
You think of African Americans and Latino youth are especially vulnerable to this kind of lyric and song?
I do, because I think the images are always representative of them. And so they internalize these images, where some people might be able just to observe it as entertainment, or they're exposed to more of a balance of music, and so their only exposure isn't about one genre of music, but they also get an opportunity to hear rock and roll, to hear other music, or to they like this difference, maybe even jazz and country. But go ahead.
Do you think that are you taking into consideration the availability of hip hop aside from radio stations on the internet?
No, I'm looking strictly at broadcast, where the FCC is supposed to be enforcing. It's supposed to be doing its job, enforcing the law.
Between the hours of 6 and 10? 6 a.m. and 10 p.m.?
Yes.
Are you asking that the hip-hop type of music that we're talking about should be off the air? It's okay to have it on the air after 10 p.m.?
Yes. Yes, I mean, if that's what people want to hear, adult-themed entertainment, it should be on after 10, but the purpose here is to focus and protect children.
We're coming up to a short bio of yourself and what you've accomplished in your young life, but you're also pictured there with Michael Powell, who's done the show and is a friend of mine. Now, Michael Powell is standing with you, and he supports what you're doing, but he didn't do anything when he was head of the FCC, did he?
He sure didn't. He sure didn't, and the reason I'm in that picture with him is that I won an award at a reception that he was honored, and so we met each other, and we have very different views on what should be done about indecency. Because I wouldn't have focused on Howard Stern. I would have focused on exactly what that law is supposed to do: protect children, and what children are being exposed to. I don't know many 7-year-olds who are like, "Oh God, I got to listen to Howard Stern for the next 4 hours this morning,"
What's the highest percentage of HIV/AIDS sector of the population, and who constitutes it?
Well, when I talk about HIV/AIDS, first of all, African American women are the leading cause of death for African American women right now, and it is growing higher. And one of the things that I talk about is that when we talk about the success of marketing hip hop and products with it, like sneakers and liquor, it's very successful. I mean, Cavassier was almost bankrupt before they made a song about it. And so here we are. Why don't we talk about the success we're having with selling sex?
What sector of African American women are the hardest hit by HIV/AIDS? I'm talking what age group?
15 to 25 years old are the most influenced by it, and there's a number of studies on it.
Is that age grouping among black young ladies the largest sample, the largest group of HIV victims of any kind?
I don't know of any kind. I just can talk about the United States.
Within the United States?
Yes.
Question. Do white entertainment industry executives have negative stereotypes about what African American youth want to hear? We'll expand on that with our guest, but first, here is her distinguished profile. Born Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 35 years of age, single, politics independent, University of Maryland, College Park campus, BA, English Literature. Johns Hopkins University, Masters in Business Administration, Marketing. Infinity Broadcasting, Washington radio outlet, promotion assistant, 3 years. Capitol Records, artist development representative, 3 years. Discovery Channel, marketing manager for U.S. Networks, 7 years. Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, college campus anti-smoking education consultant, 2004 and currently. DEF, spelled D-E-F, Jam Records, a hip-hop label, music education consultant, 2004 and currently. Industry Ears, an advocacy group to prohibit racist, misogynist, and sexually explicit language on broadcast and cable, president and co-founder, 2005 and currently. Honors, Outstanding Advocacy Award presented by former FCC Chairman Michael Powell at Black Entertainment Talent Association, 2005. Hobbies, traveling, horseback riding, hip-hop concerts, reading. Lisa Marie Fager. We're joined on the live line by Dr. Edward E. Cornwell III. He is the Chief of Trauma Services at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. The trauma surgeon, Dr. Cornwell, has developed a violence prevention project called Hype versus Reality. Welcome, Dr. Cornwell. How are you impressed by the remarks of Lisa here on the program regarding hip-hop music and its sexually explicit, misogynistic character?
Well, thank you for having me, John, and I'm impressed with Lisa's work overall. I've known her now for a couple of years, and she's taught me a lot. And I see a very real analogy between the video images that we're trying to combat, and not necessarily combat, but just to raise a sense of outrage among the general public, among the video images that our kids who are kind of soaked in a culture of violence are seeing. There's a real analogy between what they're hearing and what they're seeing and the general standards of what's acceptable.
Tell us about that video, Hype versus Reality campaign that you have going.
It started innocently enough when I was invited back in November of '03 by some MTV executives up to their offices in New York to view a video, a 50 Cent video actually, not to pick on him, but this was the one they happened to ask me. They knew I was doing some violence prevention work, and they wanted a trauma surgeon's perspective on what was purportedly an anti-violence theme. And I looked and I saw this video which had portrayed the so-called thug life, a guy standing over another guy emptying his gun. Next few images were the women around him, the bling bling, as the kids would say, the jewelry, the champagne flowing, and it put a very glamorous slant on what I would call a culture of violence. And I told those executives that day, about 20 of them, 18 of them white and Asian, 18 of them women. But not to play the race card, black entertainment television has the same images that are just as bad. I told them that it was offensive to me as a trauma surgeon, as a father, and as a black man in America.
Was it
If
misogynistic?
the NAACP saw images of Stepin Fetchit saying, "Yowza balls," they'd be up in arms. But these images, which probably most whites and many, many blacks use that the depiction of the black male seems to be far more damaging. And so when I see our kids coming into the trauma center, 15, 16, 17-year-old shot, it became clear to me that doing what we usually do, write a paper, present it at our surgical society, a trauma symposium, publish it in our surgical journals, we're speaking to dozens or maybe a few hundred people over the course of 10 months, while the popular culture reaches millions of kids every week.
So you see this is quite pernicious, do you not? And you're talking video here. Our guest here is talking radio, and of course radio can cast its own spell too. A perverse spell at times with the words that are used and the beat and also the influence of the stature of the hip hop artist.
Yes, I agree. I mean, the general theme, in my opinion, is we're talking about changing a culture. We're talking about stopping this snowball rolling down the hill. We should not fool ourselves with how dominant it is, but to change a culture takes graphic images.
Why do you think the market is so large for this kind of music that we're talking about on this program?
Circular logic here. You know, those executives told me that day, this is what the market is requesting, and I told them, well, just be honest. You know, the market requested cigarettes 40 years ago, too, and teenage kids all thought it was cool to smoke 40 years ago. Now we have the first generation of kids that are trying to convince their parents to stop smoking. The first generation of teenagers that are less likely to smoke than their parents, and that's because 35 years ago, the images of cigarette smokers on television were removed. So it took generations for that to change.
When you went to New York to have your discussion there with executives, video executives, were they executives of color?
They were mostly white in that room, and mostly female, I might add.
Do you want to say something about that, Lisa?
That's the trend in urban radio also. At Hot 97 Embassy Communications, they've never ever had a person of color be the program director there. Matter of fact, their current program director came from a station, a country station. He's never even been connected to the genre or format of music. He was doing country in San Diego, so he's never even been in a top market.
I have a name of a Radio 1 executive, and that executive is a white, middle-aged female. She determines much of the content of urban radio broadcasts, and she controls the playlist. You know whom I'm talking about?
Yes, Mary Catherine Sneed at Radio 1. She also came from country music.
Well, what do you think about this person that has such control over urban radio broadcasts? Is she reflective of the communities that she serves?
She is reflective of the executives in the community that she serves. But she is not reflective of the people who listen.
Are you saying something more than you want to say?
I'm saying that, look, my background, my mother's white. So I don't know if it's deliberate or not, but I understand that my mother still doesn't understand some things about African American culture that have to be explained to her. Now, that's why when you have executives in a room talking to each other that look like each other, but they're talking about marketing and influence another community. And this is a complex issue. This is a media issue. There's no diversity in media, employment diversity. These are all the things that happen after 1996 telecom, which is being re-looked at. So this is just a piece of the problem in this whole big issue of media reform.
Well, you know, you're saying that white entertainment industry executives must have negative stereotypes about what African American youth and the Latino youth want to hear, and that they are playing a kind of audio pornography that is pernicious to blacks and Latinos.
I say that they have a perception. Maybe it's a stereotype. I mean, like I said during the break, if I was someone who didn't know any black people and my whole introduction to them was because I watched MTV videos, Cops, and the nightly news, I'm not so sure I'd have a really great opinion of black people, and I'd probably have a stereotype of thinking what they would like to hear. Oh, they glorify these thugs. The black people in America are more educated, more wealthy than they've ever been, and we are getting this kind of low life type of genre pushed at us in every realm. I mean, from movies. I mean, God, if we're not dancing, we're pimping. I mean, when can we be smart? When are we allowed to reflect what we really are? You have Dr. Cornwell, a chief of trauma surgery, a very young guy who plays basketball all the time, you know, and you have me sitting here. I love hip hop, so that's part of me. But I know that being this lower underclass isn't all that's to it.
Do you share the views of Lisa in this regard, Dr. Cornwell?
Yeah, I'd go one step further, though. I'd say black entertainment television is just as bad.
But they're owned by the same people, by MTV now.
Right, right. That's
Yeah.
it. But,
Oh, they are.
Yeah, they're owned by
That's
Viacom.
right.
yeah, they are now. But when they first started, Robert Johnson's out of it now. He's owning a basketball team, of course.
Well, we're beyond commerce here, are we not?
Yeah, but so there's. I just want to make sure that there's not too much of that. We're not playing the victim card here because. You know, in my world, I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. I went to public school, elementary school in Washington, D.C. I was born in Freedmen's Hospital, where the freed slaves, the hospital for freed slaves after the Civil War. I taught and went to Howard University. I mean, my experience that I see is totally different from what's being portrayed. And as one of my colleagues said, who also went to Howard University College of Medicine, when he trained at the University of Pittsburgh, and his colleagues at the end of his residency training made some, without malice, but they just made some insensitive comments. He said, you know, I have to tell you guys, before I came here, I never met a white physician.
Hey, Dr. Cornwell, it's a pleasure and an honor having you with us. We're almost out of time. Thank you for joining us. When you have been dealing with radio executives, have you encountered any double standard in what they tolerate on their recordings as descriptive phrases or words used to describe blacks as opposed to words that are not there or there for whites?
Yes, there are no on record, any records or songs that have been on the air that have ever described whites using racial slurs. The one thing that I think is interesting and what has happened is that there was a song by Kanye West, I believe All Fall Down, where MTV used to blank out the word white man. And in his lyric, it wasn't anything that was like kill the white man or anything like that. It was something that said something like drug dealers buy drugs, crack kids buy crack, and the white man get paid from all of that. That was the lyric. And so when I had asked MTV communications department why they would blank that word out, the word white man, because I didn't know it was a bad word, they told me that they didn't want to offend anyone.
The full range of black slang words for blacks used on these recordings? The full range of them? They use them all.
Yes, they are. They try to blank them out on the radio, but I mean, if you are, 2 years old, you could figure out what they're saying. So it's very insulting, actually, to when you hear N-word, you hear the first letter and the last three, and I think you could figure it out.
What about payola? Is there payola at work here?
Payola is always, yes, at work right now, and a lot of these stations, I mean, you could look across the country and see that records are being played 114 times a week. That is incredible. That means that that one single is being played every hour and 14 minutes, every hour and 15 minutes, the same song. is playing over and over again.
Is the only recourse in this matter the FCC? Is there any other regulatory body? Well, Elliot Spitzer was involved in one of your situations, correct?
Yes.
He put off the air one of your, as a reason of your complaint, he put what did he put off the air?
Right. Well, Smackfest, which was the competition where
Right.
two girls smack each other until one is injured.
He eliminated that.
He actually, well, they stopped playing it, but we worked with Councilman John Liu and Charles Barron, and they were able to get Elliot Spitzer to
Could
investigate.
other AGs, attorneys general in other states do the same thing? Could they get involved in this issue?
Yes, if they're made aware of what's going on.
Do you want to say something in a concluding way to our audience?
Yeah, so what I'd like to say is that we all have the power, and I think it's not only our responsibility, it's our duty to file complaints with the FCC. When we see a violation, we need to protect our children, and that's all children.
Yeah, and by the way, the FCC's language is as follows on indecent broadcast restrictions. Language or material that in context depicts or describes sexual or excretory organs or activities, which is quite broad. And then there are indications, too, on how to proceed for filing a complaint on www.fcc.gov.
We can also go to industry-ears.com, and we have an electronic form.
Industryears.com.
Correct.
Thanks again for being my guest.
Thank you.
Be well. Racism, misogyny, and sexually explicit references in hip-hop music. The teenage market. Where's the FCC?